Okay, all right, welcome. Um, it's 12 o'clock. Why don't we get started? So welcome to Financial Fridays with Equitable Advisors. Before we get on with today's session, we're going to hear a quick word from Equitable.
We are a large financial firm and been a strategic partner of St. E's for the last 10 years. In that, we've had a commitment to the K-12 marketplace, making sure that educators are educated about their finances. We've been able to give those members additional support that's needed to make some of the biggest decisions in their life, like preparing for their retirement and their kids' college education. When an Equitable Advisor meets with a St. E's member, what our objective is to give them the confidence that they need going into retirement, making one of the biggest financial decisions they'll ever make in their life, to best assist them prepare with whatever their financial goals are. Equitable provides St. E's members includes financial resources and articles, complimentary financial profile meetings and an asset map, professional development educational webinars to units, and then in 2025 we're going to be doing a Ready to Retire series for people that are at least 1 to 3 years out from retirement and want to know how to finalize next steps. One of the benefits of being a St. E's member is on the first Friday of each month, we've always provided a Financial Friday series. It's a 30-minute series that goes from 12 to 12:30 that's presented by local regional representatives at Equitable that manage each region within St. E's on a variety of topics, including planning for the future, student loan forgiveness, and healthcare and retirement. What I would want St. E's members to know about the Equitable relationship is that you're going to have questions that come up, and there's always a tremendous amount of resources. There's an email address, stesmembers@equitable.com, that can be utilized, and there's always somebody on the other end of that email address to address any questions, comments, or concerns. Best time to plan for retirement is today. Looking at the future immediately or as soon as you're able to, realistically, you're going to be best prepared for that future. Sometimes if people haven't looked for the financial future yet, minimally 7 to 10 years out from retirement, that threshold absolutely must start because you still have time to make effective change, tweaks, and adjustments to your financial situation to best be prepared. The most important message for St. E's members to know is that Equitable Advisors is there to help them as life comes up. It is normal and it's going to happen where there's questions, concerns, things you're unsure about, and you've got a tremendous amount of resources to help and support you through that.
Okay. All right, so with that, I do want to mention that the webinar referenced in that video, Ready to Retire, is archived on the front page of cnews.org, so you can access that there. So joining us today for today's session is Luke, and just as a reminder, this session is being recorded, and we'll save questions to the end of the presentation. And our Q&A time today is best used for general questions, but please know that the Equitable team is available at any time to answer your personal and confidential questions. You'll find contact information for Luke and other regional Equitable representatives at saneys.org. And now I'll turn it over to Luke.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and share my screen. So my name's Luke Janklowski. I'm a vice president here at Equitable in our Rochester office, helping St. E's members all across the state. Today, we're going to talk about saving for college. And this is a topic that I get pretty excited to talk about. And the reason being is I get to share with people the what to do and what not to do so they can avoid the mistakes that I made when applying for college. As we know today, college is expensive. So we can help talk through some things that maybe can save you a little bit. If it's already going to be expensive, we can lower it a little bit. Just real quick, just a quick compliance reminder. I just need everyone to read the slide for a couple seconds here. What we'll talk about today. First, I'll go through student loans and student loan options. I'll talk about education funding, so how you can fund education prior to. Talk a little bit about student loan forgiveness, and then we'll close with a Q&A. In the world of student loans, there are different types of student loans. The first type is federal student loans. There are then different subcategories of federal student loans. With federal student loans, if you look at the right-hand side of my screen, you have subsidized loans and unsubsidized loans. You've probably heard these terms before. Just to walk through what the differences with them are, though. A subsidized loan, you have to demonstrate a financial need. So you have to financially qualify for a subsidized loan. The amount you can borrow is determined by the college that the person attends. And the big part of subsidized loans is interest is deferred while you're in school and up for 6 months after. That's a big deal. So if you think about that, it means basically the loans aren't accruing interest while the student is in school. Think about myself in this instance. I did not have any subsidized loans. As I'm taking loans out, I'm paying interest on them, or the interest is accruing in college. I accrued over 5 figures of interest, well over 5 figures of interest while in school. So if you can qualify for subsidized loans, it's a really big deal because you're not accruing that interest throughout school. Unsubsidized loans, there's no financial aid or no financial need, I should say, required. The amount borrowed is still determined by the college, although it is typically quite a bit higher than allowed in the subsidized loans chassis. And the key difference is interest is accrued with a unsubsidized loan during the person's education time in school. With all federal student loans, though, payments are not due until a couple of different components. So the first is after they graduate or leave school. So if they don't necessarily graduate, the student attending school doesn't graduate but still left school, they will then have to pay. Or if somebody moves to less than a half-time status, their loans they then have to start paying on. So if they're in school and a full-time student, they are not paying. If they are in school in less than half-time, or if they leave school or graduate, they are paying. The attractive part of a federal student loan is, typically speaking, the interest rates are fixed and they're often lower than private student loans. I say often because it's not necessarily very 100% of the time they are lower than the interest rates are lower than private loans, but typically speaking, they are going to be. The other thing is we do find folks will sometimes pay for school, whether through, they'll put things on a credit card, they'll put things on a personal loan, things of that nature. Federal student loans are going to have much lower interest rates than any credit card, personal loan, anything of that nature. The other cool part about a federal student loan now is this wasn't always the case, but now there's a lot of different types of repayment options. So if you look 20 years ago, you took a student loan out, you had a standard payment, you paid that payment. Didn't really matter what other circumstances arose, you just paid your payment. Now you do have several different options for federal loans that are often tied to your income. So if someone comes out of school and they have a lot of loans, they're just starting out, maybe their income's a little lower because they're just starting to work, they can go on income-based repayments or income-driven repayment plans and lower their loans until they're more ready to pay for the higher payments. The important thing to remember, though, with federal student loans is you have to complete the FAFSA form in order to obtain them. So you have to, what is actually referred to as the free application for student aid or federal student aid. So to get federal loans, you have to do the FAFSA form. Big points to remember when it comes to federal loans. Often they're going to have lower interest rates than private student loans. They're going to be fixed, and there's two different types, the subsidized and unsubsidized. Now, sometimes you can't always get all your loans federally. So as I said, the college determines how much federal loans somebody can get. There are times where they will not allow you to get all of your education through federal loans, and that's where private loans come in. Often we see that with private loans, they're going to be used to bridge the gap between the cost of college and what somebody gets in federal loans. Private loans are through a financial institution. So common ones, you might see Wells Fargo, Discover, Citizens are pretty common ones that we see federal loans, private loans taken out. There's a lot of other ones. There's definitely good private loan companies, not so good private loan companies. Generally speaking, we are going to recommend people get as much out of federal loans as they can because they are typically lower interest rates. That is not always the case. Private loans, the interest rate tied to them depends on the interest rate environment. So right now, we're in a relatively high interest rate environment. Private student loans, because of that, have really high interest rates. But if you go back, let's say 6 years ago, when I refinanced my private loans in 2019, interest rates were really, really low. So I was able to actually refinance at a lower rate than any federal loan was paying. That's pretty rare, but again, often federal loans are cheaper, not 100% of the time. The other thing that is really important to note is private student loans are not eligible for any public service loan forgiveness. So folks will come to myself, Kelly, other Equitable reps and say, I'm working for a non-for-profit, I'm working for a 501c3, how do I get my loans forgiven? I keep getting denied. And we say, well, you can't because you don't have federal loans, you have private loans. Private loans can be a great option. They absolutely have a use. They're better than taking a personal loan, better than putting things on a credit card. You just want to weigh out when you're applying for college. You're going to look at what you get offered for federal loans. You have to kind of shop your private loans institutions, figure out really what's going to make the most sense, the best mix there. Parent Plus loans. Probably the biggest misconception we hear when it comes to Parent Plus loans is people will come and say, I took Parent Plus loans out for my student, whoever that might be. Obviously, you can see there are some eligibility requirements. Typically speaking, you have to be a biological or adoptive parent. Sometimes you can be a step parent, and that person has to be a full-time student or above half-time student. But people will come to us and say, I took these loans out for my child, but once they graduate school, I'm going to transfer them to their name. That's not how a Parent Plus loan works. If you take out a Parent Plus loan for the benefit of a child, that is a loan in the parent's name. You cannot transfer that to somebody else. It is sealed. It is in the parent's name. Where that becomes important is if you're in a situation, your child graduates school, they don't want to pay for the loans or they can't pay for the loans. Legally, they are not obligated to. So you get in a situation, and I don't know what that situation may be, where a child says, hey, I don't want to pay these loans. You are stuck with that payment. So it's just important to understand that going into it. Because again, the biggest misconception we hear about loans is people are going to transfer their Parent Plus loans to their child. You cannot do that. Also, right now in 2024-2025 school year, the Parent Plus loan interest rate was just under 9.1%, 9.08%. The average federal loan was 6.3 or 6.5%, excuse me. Now think of the cost of college. If college is $100,000 and we're in a 2.5% interest rate, that's $2,500 a year difference. A lot of times, if somebody wants to help their child with college, it can make sense to take the loans out in the child's name and help them pay it during school or pay it after school versus taking them out in the parent's name, because the federal government will charge you quite a bit more for using a Parent Plus loan than if you take them out directly in the child's name. Sometimes what we see folks do as well is they'll take Parent Plus loans for anything that the college won't give the student, and federal loans. That can also be an option. There's different ways to mix and match the loans. You do want to figure out what's going to make the most sense for you from an interest rate of payment standpoint. But to just take everything in a Parent Plus loan is not always the most optimal way, because again, you're going to have a higher interest rate than if the loans were in the child's name. And then with a Parent Plus loan, the maximum amount you can get is the cost of attendance minus any financial assistance. So Where with like a private loan, if you wanted to take out a little bit extra to maybe pay for some room and board off campus, you could do that. Cannot do that with a Parent Plus loan. When it comes to deciding what kind of loans you want to take, it can definitely be confusing. Like I remember my parents didn't go to school. I was sitting there at 17 years old trying to figure it out. Really wish I knew what I knew now. Just talk to somebody. There's a lot of different types of loans, a lot of different payment plans, and get advice on what's going to work best for you in your situation because everyone is a little bit different. So you don't want to necessarily do what I did and not know what you're doing. And the next thing you know, you have all private loans that are high interest rates during school that are all accrued down. Transitioning a little bit, I'm going to talk about financial aid. So to qualify for financial aid, you have to do the FAFSA form. You have to check the college's financial aid application requirements. It is not universal across all schools. Schools will have different metrics, so you want to make sure you're looking at that school's metrics. You also then have to do that every year. It's not something you do just before you go to school. You got to do it every single year. Typically, you're going to want to start at the fall of senior year of high school and then do it every fall again for the next year. What the college is then going to do after you fill out the form is they're going to send you a financial aid offer that you want to be sure to review. Depending on where the student is going, you can potentially negotiate with the school. If you're going to a state or SUNY school, not a lot of room to negotiate there. Going to a private school, colleges want you to come to their school. There are potentially abilities to negotiate. I'm not saying they're going to make it free for you, but you could potentially get a couple thousand knocked off. And then with financial aid, there are potentially Pell Grants that people can apply for and get based on financial needs. One of the things I really wish I did as a student, and I wish my parents had known, is understood how the financial aid formula worked. There is a formula to it and things affect the formula. Income, assets, certain assets, assets in the child's name, assets in the parent's name. You want to talk with someone that understands that formula before you fill out the FAFSA form. Because if you're like myself, all throughout high school, I worked and I put money in my savings. And what I didn't know is that eventually reduced the amount of financial aid I could get. So talk with somebody that understands the formula. I can help with that. Our team can help with that because you can potentially save yourself some financial aid dollars if you know how the formula works. I'm going to transition now from loans to college savings options. The first option I'm going to talk about here is a 529 plan. A 529 plan is undoubtedly the most common type of college savings plan somebody's going to hear about. You Google college savings plans, 529 plan is going to come up. In a lot of instances, they genuinely are the best account if you know your student or your child or whoever it is going to school, is going to college. They're tailor-made for college. So money goes into these accounts and you can actually get a state tax deduction for contributing. For a married couple, they can get a $10,000 state tax deduction if they contribute up to $10,000. For a single individual, they can get a $5,000 tax deduction, state tax deduction. There's no federal tax deduction. Let me explain how that works a little bit. If I have a son and I contribute $5,000 to his 529 plan, I'm a single individual, I can write off $5,000 in my taxes. If I have 3 kids and I contribute $5,000 to each, it is a household limit of $5,000. You can put in more than that. That's not the maximum you can make to the account. That's just the maximum you can make while getting a state tax deduction. You can contribute $17,000 a year per 529 plan per person. So if I have a spouse, we have 1 child, I can contribute $17,000 to their 529 plan. My spouse contributes $17,000 as well for $34,000 in totality. If we have 2 kids, we can then contribute $68,000 in totality. So you get a tax deduction for contributing. Money then grows tax deferred. So as that money's invested in growing, you don't pay any interest on the growth. Then you go out and take it out for qualified withdrawals. It's tax free. So you never pay taxes on any of the growth. A qualified withdrawal, the federal government really has made these accounts a lot more flexible. So a qualified withdrawal might be tuition, room and board, meal plans. It could be you can pay for a laptop out of this, or textbooks or notebooks out of a 529 plan. You can also pay for things like trade schools out of a 529 plan. Now you can even pay for high school education as well through these. Where they're not qualified is if, let's say you have a commuter and they need to put tires on their car because they're commuting to school, that does not count. All things considered, they're pretty flexible. It's not all encompassing though. Where somebody gets into trouble with a 529 plan though, is if they end up not going to school, then that money, all the interest you've accrued in that account is taxable and you face a 10% IRS penalty. So let's say someone starts a 529 plan for their child when they're 2 years old, then saving, child ends up not going to school, they're going to pay penalties on that money. Now, they do have some options. They can roll it to another child, or now there's certain lifetime contributions to Roth. But generally speaking, you're going to end up paying a penalty on that. A 529 plan is great. It is a great option if you know your child is going to school. Obviously, that's sometimes hard to know when the child's 1 year old, 2 years old, whatever it may be. So that's where some of the other options will come in. They have a little bit more flexibility to them. The first option outside the 529 plan somebody could use is a non-qualified brokerage account, or what is often referred to just as a traditional investment account. If you think about it, as for retirement, for instance, you have your 403b, that's made for retirement. If you have a 529 plan, that's made for education. The rules and laws benefit retirement and education. A non-qualified brokerage account, or just a normal traditional investment account, is a way for somebody just to save and have a lot of flexibility around it. So these accounts are fully liquid at any time for any purpose. You could put money in today, take it out tomorrow. They have no funding limit, and they have the widest range of investments. Where we find people are going to use a non-retirement account, or a non-qualified account, it is a non-retirement account, but where we find people are going to use it is they say, look, I just want to save for my kids. I don't know what it's for. Maybe it's for school. Maybe it's for a home one day. Maybe if they want to buy a car, start a business. Like, I just want to have some money set aside for them. That's generally where a non-qualified account is going to come in. With these accounts, the investment gains are taxable. So you now will pay taxes on the interest that you earn. And there is no financial aid benefit to this account. Also, I did forget to mention, the 529 plan also counts against financial aid. So with these accounts, it is going to count against you. They count against you differently because 529 plan is technically owned by a parent. This can technically be owned by a parent or the child. So to summarize this account, generally speaking, where I find it's most commonly used is someone who just says, I just want to save for my child. Last account option that I'll cover today is permanent life insurance. Where we find this being used is in a multiple goal approach. So a lot of parents will go out and they'll get life insurance policies on their children. If you're looking to do that, and you also want to help them save for something, whether it's college or another expense like a home or whatever it may be, this can be a great option. Many folks don't want to pay more in taxes. Very fair. I don't want to pay any more in taxes than I already have to. These accounts do grow tax deferred. If somebody's on the border of qualifying for financial aid or are worried that they might qualify in the future, these accounts can be great because they don't count against you for financial aid. The basis, or what you put in, comes out tax-free and penalty-free. But generally speaking, we don't find that these are going to be solely funding all of college. So if somebody's goal is to pay for 100% of college, don't typically see a permanent life insurance policy used in by itself, but it's very good to complement other savings. So somebody might have a 529 plan and permanent life insurance, or a non-qualified account and permanent life insurance. It is best to start these types of accounts so the cash value of the permanent life insurance can grow and start growing when your child's young. The biggest con to this type of account, though, is it is an insurance policy. So there's a premium, just like every other insurance policy, home, whatever it may be. So with a non-qualified account, a 529 plan, I could put $1,000 in and never contribute to that account again, and it'll be there for my child down the road. With a permanent life insurance policy, if you don't pay the premiums for a long enough period of time, the policy will eventually lapse. So you are locked into a premium for a period of time. Where I find the permanent life insurance policies typically used is in the event somebody says, I want to help my child with something, but in the event they go to college, I don't want it to count against their financial aid, and I don't want to pay any more in taxes than I already do. So it can be a great option as well. It really just depends on what somebody's goals are. And there's a lot more options out there as well. There's UTMAs, UGMAs, annuities, like all of these different things. Which option or multiple options are going to make the most sense for everyone is really just comes down to their goals and their financial situation. Last thing that I'm going to touch on today is public service loan forgiveness. Over the last couple of years, there has been a lot of changes to public service loan forgiveness. And there are a lot of one-offs with public service loan forgiveness and student loan forgiveness. So if you feel like you have a situation that's unique or whatever it is, or if you have a specific question, just schedule a time with myself, someone at Equitable, we can help walk through it. There are definitely a lot of unique scenarios in this chassis. With public service loan forgiveness, you have to work for 10 years full-time, which is considered over 30 hours, at any non-for-profit 501c3 or public school. A lot of people get confused. It doesn't have to be a state or federal entity. It just has to be a non-for-profit. So if I work for a non-for-profit hospital as a church, that time counts. It also does not have to be consecutive. I could work 9 years at a non-for-profit, go to a for-profit, and then come back to a non-for-profit. You do have to make 120 qualifying payments. A qualifying payment is a payment that is on time and in the right amount. It's not early and it's not late. People say, great, I paid my student loans 3 months in advance. And it's like, that hurts because you paid it early. It's not a qualifying payment. You do have to have direct loans, which every federal loan taken out after 2007 is a direct loan now. And you have to be on an income-driven repayment. This is where folks sometimes get themselves into trouble is they have $4,000 of student loans and they make $100,000, so they don't qualify for an income-driven repayment, or they do qualify for an income-driven repayment, but based on their income-driven repayment, their loans are going to be paid off before the 120 qualifying payments. If you do all of these things, you work for a non-for-profit for 10 years, make 120 qualifying payments, you have direct loans, and you're on income-driven repayment or income-driven repayment plan, because there's a couple options there, you can get the balance of the loans forgiven. Thank you, everyone. I know we have 1 minute left, but any questions out there that I can answer?
Questions? Okay. Doesn't look like it today, Lucas. Again, you can contact Lucas or any Equitable advisor. All the contact information is at sanees.org. So I think we're good for the day. Thanks, Lucas.
Awesome. Thanks,
All right,
everyone. Have a
see you
great
next
day.
time. Bye-bye.